I've never heard that personally, but I've heard that before. The best version of you is sort of getting out of the way, you. That's what Nick Sirianni's become. So the Eagles play tonight, and they play Washington. I like Philadelphia tonight. Home team, veteran quarterback at home, better roster, short rest. I think it's a tough ask for a rookie quarterback to go and play in one of the loudest stadiums in the country against arguably the best roster. I like Philadelphia tonight to pull away second half. But it's interesting, if you go to the first 5 games this year, Philadelphia's offense, and Sirianni's an offensive coach, and the last 5 games, they average almost 11 points more a game. It's a totally different team. Totally different team. Why? Because remember in the offseason, you were hearing about Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, and there was all this. And you always heard that about Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni. Are they getting along? When Nick Sirianni got out of Shane Steichen's way and let him call the offense, they went to a Super Bowl. And you've been hearing about this. The Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, at the beginning of this season, there was, I don't know if it's going to work. Kellen Moore beginning at, remember when he got hired, it was like, I don't know, is he going to have the offense or Sirianni? And at the beginning of this season, it was Sirianni meddling too much. Now he stepped out of the way, just like he did with Steichen in the last month, and look at the offense. It's great. Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid and Sean Payton, they play design, they play call. It's their specialty. They're on the headset. That's their specialty. But there are a lot of great coaches in this league. Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll was a Jimmy Johnson was known more as a walk-around coach. That's a term that's used, walk-around guy. You set the tone, you set the temperature of the team. But you hire Josh McDaniels. Belichick did that on offense. And I was talking to Josh McDaniels after the show yesterday. He said, Bill, once a game is like, hey, what do you think here? Or what do you want to call here? He said, but Bill understood. Like, that's my expertise. Tom and Josh McDaniels, you got to get into a flow. There's a certain tempo to offense, and it's really tough, even with an offensive coach. Either you're all in or you're a walk-around guy. You can't go halfway. You can't go halfway. And beginning of this year, Kellen Moore and Sirianni, Nick was dabbling too much, just like he did with Nick Sirianni early on. And when he finally said, Nick, it's your offense. And this year, when he said, Kellen, it's your offense. And by the way, this is not a criticism. Dan Campbell is a walk-around guy. Mike Tomlin, walk-around guy. Pete Carroll, walk-around guy. Some guys are specialists. Like Sean Payton is going to design, call, orchestrate the offense. That's Kyle Shanahan. That's fine. But the criticism of Kyle Shanahan has been, maybe you should walk around more and take a look at your special teams. They're always awful. And with Dan Campbell, he wants to set the tone and temperature. He wants to touch all the parts, but he don't want to meddle. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about Jim Harbaugh. Okay. I said, Jim.
We're not here to talk about Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll. We're here to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. I get everything that Colin is saying. I do. And I don't even fully disagree. One, I do disagree with this whole idea of how this season unfolds. What is the difference? It's injuries. Injuries. But I will say, there absolutely was a conversation, and even ex-Eagles players talked about this, like Long and stuff, talked about this, how they were like, they need to run the ball more, and that there was a conversation with Sirianni, I think it was specifically, of like, we want to have a more balanced playbook. We want to have more balanced play calling. Like, we got to do this. So there was that conversation. I think Lane Johnson was involved in stuff. So there was that meeting of the minds that has also impacted the offense, but also bringing A.J. Brown and having Devontae Smith, having those guys healthy and playing consistently, your offense is going to change. You're going to put up more points. That goes without saying. Like, I mean, that should not be controversial at all, okay? And I do think Sirianni needs to stick with being a walk-around coach. I do, because it is very difficult when you are 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I'm sure you guys have experienced this with your own family life, professional life, whatever it may be. It's really tough when you have a boss. If you're trying to do something, you either need them to be all in, where they're telling you exactly what to do, and they're the ones that are leading the charge, or they completely stay out of it. They're like, hey, this is why I hired you. You're going to paint this room, whatever you're doing, right? You're going to paint this house. Like, you got it. But it's really hard when they're like, well, you shouldn't actually really do this. And what about this? And what about that? You're like, I can't work. I don't know what to do here. You're not letting me do what I want to do or how I do it. You're like, 1 minute I do one room this way, and then you're like, wow, that looks good, but I need you to change it for this room. And it's like, well, then I don't know what to do. Then when I get to that third room, I'm like, well, I don't know. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to do it like room 1 or room 2? All right. And it just becomes harder and harder. And I'm sure that was the case with Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore. That could be a problem because it's like, hey, this is my game plan, but it's like, I know Nick Sirianni wants me to pass more. I know he wants me to do, whatever it may be, X, Y, and Z. It just becomes harder for you to kind of get into your own rhythm, which is what Colin was also highlighting with like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and whatnot, that it is more of this occasional thing where it's like, hey, you know what, let's go for it. Or, hey, what do you think in this play? It doesn't mean that you can't have any involvement, but it does need to be a lot more specific and strategic. I mean, just think about it. Just do the thought experiment. You're trying to do work and your boss like pops their head and they go, hello, what are you doing over there? Right? It's just like you're immediately like, you're immediately disrupted. Right? People love to work without having their bosses hanging over their shoulders, going in and out and in and out. So it makes sense that you're going to have that same effect with an NFL team. Now, I am on the record saying that I do believe that it is better to have a coach who is the play designer, who is the play caller. It makes you more resilient and more sustainable. You're less reliant on your coordinators. It's why Andy Reid, we can use Shanahan and use all these other people. I don't know why he's not saying Andy Reid. Andy Reid is the gold standard of that. You have the offensive head coach. You have the guy who's making the plays, the play designs, the calling the plays, helping also grow and coach the player to improve himself from just an actual pure coaching perspective and not even game management perspective. And you're not relying on coordinators. You can have coordinators come and go and it doesn't matter because you still have that guy. And to me, like, that is what makes you, it makes your greatness much more sustainable. Because yes, losing Shane Steichen, I mean, Eagles should know this. Like, losing Shane Steichen was a huge issue for them. Their offensive coordinator was not good. He was not good at calling plays either. People still want to kind of blame Nick Sirianni for that, and I reject that. Troy Aikman was loud and clear about it. He tried his best not to rip him, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, but he was just like, it's hard, man. Calling plays is hard, and I don't think he's really doing that good of a job right now. I mean, like he called it, and I think he was very accurate with that. I think he called it in the playoff game against the Bucks, actually. I think is what it was. But yeah, so I think it's exciting if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, in terms of what you're seeing, how this team is developing, how they're getting comfortable, how Kellen Moore is shining, because there was questions about Kellen Moore. I mean, I was saying this is a great hire. Some people tried to act like it wasn't. I was on the record being like, dude, this is good, this is good, this is good. Let's go. But again, we saw how this season has to unfold. First off, the first few weeks, lots of teams are rusty, especially teams that don't have their players playing preseason. We saw a little bit of that. They also then had injuries. A.J. Brown played the first game, and that was it. And then he didn't come back until a couple games ago. That's your number one offensive weapon. That is an absolute elite weapon. He is a top offensive weapon in the NFL as a whole. He's probably higher than some quarterbacks out there. I mean, he just is. He is an absolute beast. A monster. So yes, if you remove that monster from your team, yeah, you're probably going to score a little bit less. You're probably not going to have your offense be as dynamic and as threatening. Like, that goes without saying. Otherwise, there would be no reason to pay Justin Jefferson. There would be no reason to pay Tyreek Hill. There'd be no reason to pay A.J. Brown. And now you're going to take also Devontae for a couple games. Well, now you're really trying to figure stuff out. And I think that is a hard spot for someone like a Kellen Moore, because he's now with a new team trying to figure this all out, trying to figure out how to maximize Jalen Hurts, AJ, Devontae, Saquon, the O-line, like all this type of stuff. You now remove some pieces and he's like, well, wait a second, man, I just got here. I just have figured out how to maximize this offense with those weapons. Now you're giving me a whole new thing that I have to do. I now have to figure out, how do I maximize, how do I put Jalen Hurts, what is he comfortable and not comfortable doing when A.J. Brown isn't there, when Devontae's not there? Who does he have a connection with? Does he lean more towards tight end? Does he want to throw more to running backs? Like, what's the story here? He has to troubleshoot. These guys are not robots. It's not, okay, take AJ away and now we plug this guy in, and Kellen Moore, he's a great coordinator. He'll be able to call the plays. Like, no, he has to figure stuff out. He has to troubleshoot. So this season, and that's why I kept saying the beginning of the season was death by 1,000 paper cuts as to why everybody felt they why they felt the way they did about the Philadelphia Eagles. It was because of how last season unfolded, because of injuries, because of coordinating issues that then brought us into this season. Things looked pretty good in that first game. I know it wasn't perfect, but it was week 1. Then you have injuries, and then you have a tough loss. And because of that, everybody was like sounding the alarm. Eagles are in trouble. Eagles are bad. And I was like, we have to look at how we got here. This wasn't just because they have bad players, bad coaching, bad stuff, bad. There was no source problem. It was just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And that's how you got to this whole idea of like, well, the Eagles aren't that good. And now here we are. They're entering on a 5-game win streak. And now everyone's like, Kellen Moore is great. Nick Sirianni, he got out of his own way. He's a walk-around coach. He's a great hype guy. And it's like, I got whiplash, man. I really do. I got whiplash from all of this type of stuff. Going into the season, you have people like Nick Wright saying that the Philadelphia Eagles are literally one of the worst teams in the NFL. He said that. He straight up said that. He said last season, they ended the season as one of the worst teams ever. And he said that they're going to continue to be that there's no reason for them. Why? Because they got Kellen Moore and Saquon Barkley. He said Saquon Barkley was washed, not really that good. Vic Fangio, what does he know? Miami Dolphins couldn't get rid of him fast enough. And then it's like, here we are. You have this season, you have faced a little bit of adversity, and it's like, this isn't not working. Jalen Hurts isn't a good quarterback. Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore. I thought Kellen Moore was supposed to fix this offense. Vic Fangio, this defense looks awful. And now that they start winning and now that they're playing good, it's like, I told you Vic Fangio was going to work. He's a great defensive mind. Kellen Moore, man, if we just let Kellen Moore do his thing, Jalen Hurts, MVP. And it's just like, where are we now? Like, oh my God, if the Eagles lose this game, is it going to be back to them being like, Jaden Daniels is the future of the NFC East. Jalen Hurts, you could just tell the difference. Jaden Daniels has it. Jalen Hurts doesn't. Did the Eagles make a mistake signing Jalen Hurts to a long-term contract, right? Like, are they too A.J. Brown dependent? Like, does Nick Sirianni need to be fired? And if they win, it's like, yep, the Philadelphia Eagles are the king of the East. No one can stop them. Can they win the Super Bowl? And then there'll be debates. I think they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It's just like so back and forth. You can see my energy because I feel the whiplash of it all. It's just like, where are we going to land with the Philadelphia Eagles next? Like, my God, like, it's just crazy. So this game's going to be cool. This game's going to be exciting. I've said this in a previous video. If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you should be pumped. Playing the Commanders and the Giants for the last God knows how many years have been like the most boring games. It's like, who cares? The Commanders have nothing. The Giants got nothing. Beating Daniel Jones is exciting. I don't think so. At least the Eagles and the Cowboys games were pretty competitive when both teams were healthy and playing each other. Those were always fun games, often split between the two teams. Now there's stakes. Now Jaden Daniels. And if you're an Eagles fan, you're probably going to want to root against Jaden and all these other things. It just makes it so much more fun, so much more interesting to me. I mean, beating any of the other, how many quarterbacks have they gone through over the last few years was just never that interesting for me to watch. And now there's some excitement. There's probably going to be a reinvigorating of this rivalry, which I'm excited for. Like I said, I like to watch divisional games that are close, tight, exciting, where both teams have something to fight for. That's why I want to see the Broncos and the Chargers get better, to actually compete with the Chiefs, make it fun, make it actually feel like, hey, the Chargers can win the division. That's what's been so fun about the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Ravens. Those games have been awesome. The NFC North having the Vikings, the Packers, the Lions. It was supposed to be the Bears, and the Bears, and it's just like, it's just fun. It's fun going into the season, fun going into these games where it really feels like there's stakes involved right now. If the Eagles lose, that really gives the Commanders a gigantic front. So I think their chances of winning the division go up to like 70-80%. If the Eagles win, their chances of winning the division go up to 80-90%. Like, it skyrockets. So there's true stakes at this game right now, and I can't wait for it personally. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. We went hard in this one. Let me know what you guys are all thinking. Do you think Philly will take a commanding lead in the NFC East? And how do you feel about this back and forth? Are the Eagles good or are they bad? Are they amazing or are they terrible? Are they a disaster or are they one of the best run franchises in the NFL? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.